stages, which we call sliding, stepping, and pulling. We can discuss that afterwards, because otherwise I'll get some pulling by the chairman, I guess. One thing I would like to mention, to come back to forces, that's what we can now also calculate from this simulation. And I was mentioning this L1 stalk co-motion with the tRNA, so both move in that direction here. And who's pulling whom? Is, like shown here schematically here, the tRNA pushing the L1, yeah, like here, or is the L1 the driving agent, driven by something else, and pulling the tRNA along in that direction? How can we decide? And the answer is, we plot the interaction energy, shown here, as a function of the mutual distance, the reaction coordinate of these two. And this simple model here would translate into this curve here. So if we are pushing, then the spring here, the interaction, which doesn't have to be a spring, of course, is repulsive, and we have this branch here of this interaction potential. If we are pulling, we have to be on this side of the branch, because the spring is extended. Now, from the simulation, we get this, and I think you will agree that this fits very nicely on this branch, and certainly not on this, from which we can establish this, that the L1 is here the pulling agent. All right, that's what I wanted to tell you about the ribosome. The virus capsid, I think I will skip, except for maybe mentioning this is the largest biological system in the world, which has been simulated with 4.5 million particles here, also fully surveyed. And also here we were able to come up with a map of the elastic properties of this virus capsid against mechanical pressure, as it happens when the whole thing gets infectious. We also currently, in close collaboration with Reinhard Jahn, looking at vesicle fusion, which has been mentioned several times here. So we know a little bit more accurately now how, for example, snare proteins drive vesicle fusion, as you can see here in that movie. And we aim at whole vesicles, including the whole fusion machinery, for example, as you can see here with coarse-grained simulation. Now, to wrap up things, I should probably look a little back into the 50s and re-emphasize that what we are doing grounds, relies on fundamental physical laws and basically on the Schrödinger equation shown here on the left side. And in the 50s, we were able to calculate the structure and certain properties of small molecules, like a water molecule, like shown here, from the Schrödinger equation. And with a number of approximation steps, in the first molecular dynamics simulation, 75, we were able to look at very short picosecond dynamics of proteins. Later on, we were able to put the proteins into membranes and the whole environment, physiological environment, like I've shown you, to look at whole protein machines like the F-ATPase, membrane fusion, viral capsid, whole organelles, and trains. And I think this is a tremendous advance, also driven by the advance of computer power and the advance of better method during the past 50 years or so. And I have no idea where this will guide us. I have sketched here a few crazy ideas, but I think we live in very exciting times also in the simulation business. I'm really excited that I can take part together with my group in that, whom I thank very much. The names were all listed with the project. Without these people, that would have not been possible. It's really exciting. Why don't you join us? Thank you very much.
You showed the simulation of the titin unfolding, and particularly interesting is the titin kinase component, where you can measure enzymatic activity. Now, how about folding? About folding.
Oh yeah, thanks for the question. I think also there has been dramatic improvements in the past 3 or 4 years, and that is mainly due to efforts by David Shaw, who has come up with specialized hardware which enabled him to simulate milliseconds. So what we and others have done before is microseconds folding simulations, very small proteins. Physicists may call it proteins, biologists probably will not call it proteins, 30 amino acids size about. They fold in microseconds, and that has been simulated also before this specialized hardware. Now, since we can simulate milliseconds, I think it is currently like 20 to 25 proteins which have been successfully ab initio, first principles being folded and arrived at the right structures, which I think was a tremendous success for the simulations. If I would have been asked 10 years ago what would be the most important questions which I want to have answered, with like a fairy tale which gives me a free wish, I would have wanted to know whether the force fields are accurate enough to really predict the correct folded structure. And at least for these 25 proteins which we have looked at now in the community, that seems to be the case. That's wonderful. Thanks for the good question.
Well, my question was, in trying to, I want you to dwell on the question of whether complexity scales up with size of macromolecules, or you envisage another type of barrier to solving relevant biological questions?
Yeah, that's also a very, very relevant and good question. Complexity dramatically scales up. I mean, there are estimates when I come back to the folding problem that the number of local minima, which you need to visit during folding, kind of goes up by an exponential factor with the number of residues of the protein. This is just one example, and the problem gets even more severe when you come to complexes like the ribosome, spliceosome, nuclear pore complexes, and many others which get into our hands now and into which we can access now. So complexity gets tremendously increased, and it will be a challenge really to meet that, but I think this is exactly the point for the simulation. If you strive for simple analytic solutions or so, then you are dead in this field. I guess it's the combination between clever theories and brute force simulation which brings us really forward. For example, in the previous talk, the Jasinski equation has been mentioned. That is one of these beautiful new advances discovered in the past 10 years, which really bring us forward, also on the analytic side, but that's not enough. We need both.